Just a couple of last things to tie up here. So I had talked to you a little bit about Hydra. When we talked about cnidarians. We're going to actually, though, you're going to laugh, but they're on order and they should be coming in the mail soon. We're going to actually be looking at Hydra when they do arrive. But we're going to move on, and when they do come, we'll come back to do the
If they do come.
Yeah, if they do.
Yes,
the same company.
Why would you?
Yeah.
You make sure. What else do they sell?
It's Invertebrate Mart. I don't know, I should have gone to
Are you
maybe
serious?
Invert Depot
Are you
instead.
serious? Is it really called Invert?
Yeah, or Hydras or Us. I could have gotten it from.
Okay, now you go.
I think that would have been the most reliable.
Nicholas?
Did you get it off of Amazon? Because I ordered pizza. It took like 2 weeks. It takes like 2 weeks. From
No, I don't believe they sell
Wait, a
invertebrates
pizza?
on Amazon.
Why would you order a pizza? You ordered
A pizza off of Amazon. I think that would be way better.
Alright, anyway, let's move on to our vertebrate notes. Or invertebrates.
Wait, what is the company actually called
The company I actually ordered from is called Masco.
So it's not
anything like burglary.
It's not invertebrate Mart.
Isn't it a gas station?
No. Alright, so anyway, we will look at these when they arrive, but until then, we'll move on. So Hydra are cnidarians, and they share the characteristic called cnidarians. And we saw some of those yesterday in looking at those bottles. They have radial symmetry. Okay. They have one single body opening, and food enters this opening, and waste leaves that opening. You know, if we're thinking about a jellyfish, the body opening is underneath the jelly part of the jellyfish, in the middle of all the tentacles. That's where they put food. In the Hydra, which is pictured on your slide, this is the stalk of the Hydra. It's sort of attached. The bottom of the stalk would attach to a surface, just sort of sits there in the water. And the body opening would be right in the middle of all the tentacles. Okay? So as you know, they hunt for food using these stinging cells called nematocysts. And these nematocysts basically inject a small amount of poison into their prey, immobilizing it, maybe eventually killing it, depends on the prey, and so they can grab with their tentacles and put it into their body cavity. Once it's in there, that's where it's digested, and they can then absorb the energy from it, and then any waste products just leave that same body open. What's that? No. A Hydra, no, wouldn't sting us. They're very, very tiny. When we see them, you know, they're 2-3 millimeters tall. When we look at them under the microscope, they're so small and they have such a small amount of poison in relative to us, they wouldn't hurt us. But as you know, a jellyfish, you know, has enough poison that could really hurt a person. So, but these do not.
Do they eat asexuals?
They eat tiny little organisms. I'll show you what they're going to eat in a minute, 2 slides from now. I'll show you an example of what they eat. But any small little organisms or protists or tiny little animals, they'll eat. And Hydra reproduce, they can reproduce in 2 different ways, asexually and sexually. And we mentioned, I think, budding, but budding is a form of asexual reproduction in which basically a new organism starts to grow out of the side of the adult organism. Okay? So you can see in this Hydra in the picture, growing out of the side of it is another Hydra. That's a Hydra bud. And it would grow larger until it's fairly well developed, and then it breaks off, kind of floats away, finds another place to live, and then it's its own organism. So that original Hydra has reproduced, but it's asexual reproduction because there's only one parent involved. That new Hydra that budded off is an exact genetic copy of the original, so there's no variation added. David?
Okay, so the Hydra that's growing off of it, does it sustain itself by using the host Hydras?
Yeah, until it's well developed, yeah, and then breaks off. Here's just another picture. You can start, the bud starts off as just a little bump on the stalk of the of the Hydra. It grows larger, starts to grow tentacles till it's large enough, splits off and floats away to do its own. But Hydra also are able to reproduce sexually. So Hydra are what's called a hermaphroditic organism. And this is common in many of the simpler living organisms, many of the simpler vertebrae. And I think we learned about this when we were talking about leeches. Leeches are hermaphroditic as well. A lot of worms are. What that means is that one single living individual has both male and female reproductive organs. So each organism can produce sperm cells and egg cells. But they generally do not self-fertilize. So sperm cells from one individual don't fertilize its own egg cells usually. What happens is they still have some sort of mating procedure when two different organisms exchange both sperm and egg cells, so they actually have some exchange of genetic material. Because remember, that is the ultimate, one of the benefits of sexual reproduction is that you add variation to the species. You have new combinations of traits, sort of like shuffling the deck of the genes. So self-fertilizing doesn't help that at all. It doesn't allow that to happen. So they usually do find a mate, they exchange sperm and egg cells, and then they can reproduce sexually. So they can reproduce in both ways.
Do they usually do budding or sexual reproduction?
It depends, and it depends on the resources available. Often in times when there is plenty of food present, then budding is more common. At times when there's less food present, then sexual reproduction is more common. Can you guess why budding would be more common when food is available? Excuse me. Ayla?
Because it would then need extra energy for the other Hydra growing off of it.
Yeah, exactly. It requires a lot of energy to produce that that Hydra bud and create a full living organism. So yes, that's exactly why. All right, so those are Hydra. That's how it reproduces. Now, when our Hydra arrive, hopefully at the same time, some Daphne will arrive as well. Daphne are invertebrates. They're tiny little crustaceans. So they're arthropods, they're crustaceans. You don't have a slide for that. And they're really cool. They have sort of a almost clear exoskeleton, so you could see many of their organs inside. When they're alive, you can see their heart beating inside of them. They have digestive tract that you can see. They have these little modified legs that they use to paddle through the water. They almost look like wings. They're sometimes called the water flea. But this is a Daphne, and that's what Hydra often will eat. And when we get the Hydra, we'll add some Daphne to them eventually, and hopefully, usually every year you could see some of the Hydra capture a Daphne and actually consume it, put it into its body. It's kind of neat to see. There's this little quick video clip here. Okay. This just shows a Hydra and a Daphne battling for survival. Who do you think wins?
Hydra.
And Daphne?
The Daphne over the lake.
Alright, well, we'll soon see.
Hydra. No, I know that the Daphne is not going to just like eat it.
So it's a Hydra. And then the Daphne.
Oh, that's awesome.
Can I change my answer?
Yeah, just keep focus all over the place so you touch it.
We make it that meal.
Yeah, you got it. Oh my gosh.
Is that it?
That is crazy.
The Daphne are usually much larger than the stalk of the Hydra, but they're obviously very flexible. They can fit all that Daphne inside of their one body cavity.
What if it's just like burrowing out that?
Let's try to keep the focus here.
It's still alive,
See those little legs there?
Let's try. I'm losing. There we go.
Oh, what's happening? Is he like switching to thermal vision?
Oh, look up.
Did it die? Did the Hydra die?
I died. You're right, Daphne won. You gotta wait. At least, I don't know if he won, but he at least didn't get eaten.
That's right. I think
On
you're
your
done.
dog. On your dog.
Get a broken arm.
Alright, so now we're in our new packet. So we are now going to start to talk about vertebrates, and we're going to take each class one by one and talk about some of the characteristics, some of the unique adaptations that they have to survival, and we'll go from there. So we're talking vertebrates. Again, kingdom is what? Animal. And a vertebrate is an animal with a backbone. In the name of the phylum? Yes, chordate. So that's where we are in terms of taxonomy. And so all of these animals have bones, including vertebrae. What do you think we call those bones? Bones found inside an animal. You're close, very close. Means the same, Victoria?
Skeleton.
No, it's some kind of skeleton.
Interskeleton?
No, close though.
Inside skeleton.
It means that endo means inside a skeleton. It's the opposite of exo. Skeleton. And so we'll talk about these 5 basic groups. So we have, what are these? Fish. Frogs is not a class. Amphibians.
Reptiles. Birds.
Mammals. Fish, amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals. So today we'll start with fish. Alright, so for fish, one of the adaptations fish have is scales. And the scales of a fish are kind of like the shingles on a roof. Now, the shingles that are on a roof that prevent snow and rain from getting into your house, each layer overlaps the layer below it. Okay? And so fish scales are the same way. They're a series of plates that overlap each other, protecting the fish, preventing bacteria from entering. And if you've ever gone fishing, you picked up a fish, you may notice they're kind of slimy, right? Their scales produce mucus as well that helps them glide through the water, helps repel any parasites and so forth. So, tell the age of a fish by looking at their scales through the microscope. The scales of a fish are similar to rings in a tree that you could count, because fish grow more during warmer months than they do in colder months. So fish in climates where there's seasonal changes in temperature, you'll see that the scales grow larger. They have sort of rings in them, and they grow more in the summer, less in the winter, so it forms a pattern. And if you count those, you can determine how old the fish is. They also have a little small round bone in their head called an otolith. And by looking at this otolith, it's created layer upon layer each year, and that's the same thing. If you slice it and look at the rings in it, you can determine how old the fish is. And when I was in college, I had to take a whole 4-credit class only about fish, and so we learned about counting the rings in the scales and analyzing the otoliths of these things.
Is that why in salmon, like, sort of, it's easy to, like, break apart into, like, I don't know.
Salmon? You mean the meat like?
Well, it's like some sort of part of the meat, so it just, like, slides off each other.
I don't know if it's not. I don't think it's because of the scales. It's just because of the structure of that muscle. Fish also, many fish have an adaptation that helps them called counter shading. Can anyone guess what this is? Matthew?
Like sort of camouflage mechanism?
Sort of, but it's a specific type of camouflage. Nicholas?
Oh, it's when they have like a white belly, and so when their predators like look up, then they see the white and then the sun above it, so they think they're just looking at sun. Then when you look down at them, their scales are dark, so they think they're looking at ground.
Yeah, counter shading is common. You're right. It's when a species is generally darker on top and lighter on the bottom, and it's common in birds and fish because they often will have predators either below them or they could also be above them. And so being darker on top provides camouflage from above because you tend to blend in better with a dark bed of the lake or the ocean or whatever. Or any predators from below looking up see a lighter color against the lighter color of the sky at the surface of the water.
What about the brightly colored ones? Are they just like?
Yeah, I mean there's a variety. This is just common in many fish, but often they're for attracting mates. Brightly colored fish. This other example is salmon. See, this thing counter shading. Here's some more counter shading, but this is not a fish. What is it?
Penguin.
What is it? What class?
Bird. But it can't fly.
They used to fly.
Mammals. I heard several mammal answers in there. A penguin is a
Bird. But it can't fly.
Bird.
Same as an ostrich. And emus.
One of the things we'll talk about as we talk about the vertebrates are their body temperature. And there's sort of two words that we use, and they're not really great terms, but we still are going to use them that tell about the body temperature. What are the words?
Warm-blooded and cold-blooded.
Warm-blooded and cold-blooded. And they're not great words because a warm-blooded animal's blood is not necessarily warm and cold-blooded is not necessarily cold. There are other terms that can be used, but we'll stick with the traditional cold-blooded and warm-blooded. What are fish? Which one? Ayla?
Cold-blooded.
Yeah, generally cold-blooded, which means that, so what does it mean if we say that they're cold-blooded? Ryan?
Their body temperature changes based on where they are.
Exactly. Hold on. Their body, cold-blooded means that their body temperature fluctuates with their outside environment. So, right now, on First Lake in Old Forge, beneath the layer of ice, there's fish living in there, and water that's, 33, 34, 35 degrees Fahrenheit. And those fish, their body temperatures dropped way down to that temperature. Okay. On hot days, in the summer, when that water warms up to 65 degrees or whatever it gets to, their body temperatures increase to that level as well. And so their body temperature changes or fluctuates based on the temperature around them. Now, does anybody know how that's a benefit? So that's obviously an adaptation. How does it help those animals, Jax?
Some animals can detect heat, so if they're the same temperature, they won't see the
That's a good idea. I never really thought about that, but possibly. Victoria?
They can live like in any conditions because they.
Actually, no. There's some conditions they cannot live in. There are areas where it's too cold for cold-blooded organisms. Not?
It provides it slows the metabolism down for during winter months, and it speeds the metabolism up during warm months.
Yeah, that's very close. Is that cold-blooded organisms require much less food than warm-blooded organisms. Warm-blooded organisms, much of the energy they consume, many of the calories, go into just maintaining a constant body temperature. Cold-blooded animals don't need to maintain that constant body temperature. They require much less food. So has anyone ever had a pet reptile, snake or something? How often do you have to feed it? What do you have?
I have a leopard gecko.
A leopard gecko? Okay. How often do you have to feed it?
4 crickets a day.
4 crickets a day? Okay. Anyone ever had a snake, or know people that have big snakes? Generally, they don't feed them that often. They can go weeks without eating because they don't burn a lot of energy maintaining their body temperature. Victoria?
Yeah, why like my mom told me that it's fish at home. It can go like 2 weeks without eating.
Yeah, sometimes fish can go a long time without eating. Same thing, because they're cold-blooded. They don't require all that much energy to maintain. Yeah. Nicholas?
There was this orienteering guy who was all like smart about staying out in the wild and everything. He said the humans could go 3 weeks without food.
Oh yeah, definitely. Probably even more than 3 weeks. Yeah. Yeah.
I was watching, like, this guy, he had a snake, and then he was at a party with it, so then he let the snake, sorry, this is totally off topic, but he let the snake kiss a baby. So then, it was about to go to the baby, and then they went to commercial. I was like, oh! So then it came back, it kissed the baby, and nothing happened, but then, like, 2 seconds later, it started biting his face.
Why
Not the baby.
Why do you bring a snake to a party?
I don't want to, that's not a party I want to go to, but thank you for sharing, David. All right, let's move on. Another interesting adaptation of fish is a sense organ that's called the lateral line. The lateral line of a fish is a special sensory organ that runs, you can see it here in this picture, right down the lateral side of the fish. And you can sort of see it here. I think it's better without the circle on it, but can you see the line here?
Yeah.
And that helps them to detect vibrations in food and so forth. Just another sensory organ. Fish, like the other classes that we're going to talk about, all reproduce sexually, although some can reproduce asexually. But fish reproduce sexually, and they have X. So what we're going to talk about with each group is where does the fertilization of the egg take place? And it can either be internally or externally. Fish have external fertilization of the eggs. We call it spawning. If you've ever heard fish are going to spawn. And basically what it means is that female fish release eggs into the water, sperm cells into the water in the same location. And basically they mix together, and some of the egg cells become fertilized by sperm cells from the male. So that's called spawning. A single female fish can lay hundreds of thousands of eggs at one time when she spawns. So they lay huge numbers of eggs. They have no real parental care of the eggs. They basically release them, and then they leave them.
How big are the eggs?
Small, real small.
About this size. Wait,
Yeah.
it says it can be on. Yeah, about the size can be. Ew.
So they have external fertilization to fertilize eggs, and then they also have external development. So there's two things we talk about with reproduction for all of these classes. Where are the eggs fertilized, and where do the young develop and grow? So for fish, they have external fertilization and external development, because the young grow from an egg and hatch outside of the organism.
So, you know when Nemo, only one egg was left in every Nemo? Do you think because females can actually make so many, do you think that would even be possible that only one would be left?
It is, and one of the reasons that they do release so many. Obviously, hundreds of thousands of eggs do not grow into fish in our streams and rivers. If they did, we'd be clogged up with fish, you know. Only a very, very small percentage make it to adulthood. First off, the eggs are laid. Many of them are not fertilized by sperm cells, so they can't grow into fish. Then, many of them don't even hatch. Then, out of those, because many of them are eaten by predators as well. Eggs are a great source of food for predators. The ones that do hatch, many of those young are eaten by predators. Out of those, many of those cannot find enough food to survive. So there's a whole series of factors that lead to not all of those fish actually developing into adults. Fish breathe through gills. Gills are a respiratory organ used for gas exchange. They basically water passes over the gills, and the fish is able to extract oxygen from that water. And they also release carbon dioxide into the water.
So that means fish breathe oxygen.
Yep, fish breathe oxygen. I don't
So
know
why
if you
do
exactly call it breathing, but fish take in oxygen.
So why do they down there?
Their gills are very, very thin and fine, and they need water running over them at all times. Once they're out of the water, those gills basically collapse on each other and they can't obtain. They're adapted to getting oxygen only from the water.
What if you just like put a hose on it?
It's the same sort of reason why, if we go in the water and breathe in water, we drown. Even though there's oxygen in the water and there's enough, that fish can live from it, our lungs are not adapted for withdrawing that oxygen from the water.
Does that mean they're kind of like filter feeders with the air? Because they sort of like filter the air?
Kind of, but in fish, if you've ever gone fishing and caught fish, fish have, their gills are on the side, they have a gill covering called an operculum. And if you watch the fish, you can see it moves in and out. And basically they take water, it goes into their mouth, and then they pass it through their gills and back out through the sides of their body. And as that water is moving along past their gills, oxygen is extracted from it.
Do you think mermaids have gills?
No, they definitely do not. No, they have lungs. What's that?
Wait, what are we talking
No, they gotta come up to the surface to breathe water. Scientists have proven that.
They're like whales.
Wait, mermaids actually go?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's called human.
Didn't you ever see The Little Mermaid?
Yeah. That's real?
Yeah, it's a documentary, isn't it?
It's a
What
documentary
about it?
slash
What's that?
real.
Nicholas, you watched it?
But they like the same as sharks, so like if you pull them by the tail and the thing still gets drowned.
No, it depends. Some fish actually pump the water in through their mouth and squeeze it over their gills, so they can do it. But some need to be swimming through the water in order to do that.
So if you just kept one of those fish's mouth in water, you would just see water going.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Another interesting. Here you see the gills. They're very, they're really red because they're rich in blood vessels in order to extract that oxygen. What's that?
Do people eat the gills too?
Generally no, but I think you probably could.
So couldn't you just like
You would just get fish blood and then you would
pump water through there?
Yeah. Yeah. Or did I remember, does anyone go fishing a lot? They have those little metal chain things that you used to hold the fish and you put one end in the mouth and then the other end comes out through the gill opening, through their operculum, you clip it on just so they can't escape. So, it's not hurting the fish, it's just there's an opening there and that's what you hook it to.
When I went deep sea fishing, they shoved it through their eyes.
Oh, really?
And
I have a deep sea fishing story as well.
oh, tell.
Now? Alright. So when I was a kid, we used to go to Florida every year in the winter, and so one year my father decided he was going to take me deep sea fishing. So it was in Miami, so you basically get on a huge boat, and there's probably, 20 other people out there deep sea fishing. You go way out in the ocean, and you have your pole and you're fishing, whatever. I was probably 8 or 9 maybe. And so we went out and we did the fishing, it was fine, I don't think we caught anything. But then one of the things they did on this boat is they had a little raffle for all the people that were, you have to pay to go on the boat, but they had a little raffle that whoever won the raffle, they got to use big live bait rather than the little chunks of fish that we were using. So my dad and I, we won the little raffle, so we got to fish with fish. They had big fish like this that they put on your line for you and cast them out. So we got to fish with those, and you're supposed to be able to catch bigger fish if you use, the bigger live bait. So we were fishing, and all of a sudden we were there on the boat, and all of a sudden my line starts going plunging into the water, so we know we caught a fish. So they're trying to reel it in, and we can't even reel the thing in. So all the crew comes in to help. So they help to reel the thing in. They finally get it close to the side of the boat, and so we're all sort of look over, and we caught a shark. A hammerhead shark. Yeah. A hammerhead shark that was bigger than I was. So it's kind of crazy, but it's in the water, it's fine. But so they're gonna catch it and bring it on, they're gonna bring it onto the deck of the boat. So I didn't know exactly how, you can't reel it in, it's too heavy to reel in a fishing pole. So what they have is a big long pole, like a broom handle, but on the end is a big hook, like this. So basically, they reel it in so the fish is right next to the side of the boat, and they take this big broom handle hook thing, and they start jabbing it into the side of the hammerhead shark. And finally, they get it in there. 2 guys, they have 2 of them hooked in, and they both like grab the thing and they hoist it onto the deck of the boat. But it's not like dead; it's just got 2 holes poking inside, so now it's just really mad. So they get the thing and it's on the deck of the boat, and I'm on the deck of the boat, and it starts like flopping around, and blood is pouring out of the side of it, and it's a hammerhead shark, so it's got crazy looking eyes and nasty mouth with huge teeth, and my recollection is it flopping out, chasing me down the deck of the boat as I'm running down the deck crying and screaming. So to subdue the fish, so not that that wasn't traumatic enough, to subdue the hammerhead shark, they bring out the baseball bats. And they basically, to the crew members, the baseball bats, they just wail on the thing until it's unconscious, and then they put it in a big bin, and then it was dead. They killed it, and then they said, "Well, you can take it home if you want to and eat it." We did not take it home though. We gave it to somebody else.